we would have a couple days in a row where things would be okay, but normally, no, it was never a couple weeks where things were great. We would have a few hours at a time when things were really good, and he and I can get past difficulties.
Episode number 61 of People I Know Show. Curt Carstensen joined by Lee Bush today. We're in your home.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
You're in my Toastmasters group, Free Thought Toastmasters, which is based here in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Right.
So I think we've gotten to know each other a little bit over the last couple of years. The moment, and you maybe remember, that stands out to me is I gave a speech for my friend's wedding. John and Lindsay Haddon, they've both been guests on the podcast before.
Yes.
And I was giving the speech, and it had these Toastmasters speeches, as Toastmasters is a group to practice public speaking and also get some leadership opportunities. But I've been practicing my public speaking, and now I had a public speech outside of Toastmasters giving a toast at a wedding. And I was wondering, will anyone in this room in this group want to come and be my evaluator as we normally did? And you said that you would, and I didn't really know you. And you came out there. It was their wedding. It was a beautiful Saturday. Outside, you just sat down on the table. And
at a mansion on Summit Avenue, I might add. It was a lovely, lovely outdoor venue and location. It was a beautiful.
You crashed a wedding. Had
Yes.
you ever crashed a wedding before? Was that the first
I have,
time?
but not on Summit Avenue.
Yeah, that was really neat. So that's a moment where you stood out as, just someone else in the group to, okay, wow, you offered your time, you came, you did that. Maybe you just wanted to see the mansion, I don't know. But you're there and you evaluated my speech that day. And the thing about Toastmasters is if you're in the group for some time with the same people, you begin to learn more and more about the other members of the club. And you've given a number of speeches now that I've been there for. I've learned a lot about you. I've learned some of your hobbies and things that you enjoy doing. And more recently, and I think probably the reason why I asked you to be a guest today is you've opened up about some things that are not that easy to talk about. We're going to get into that. But as a way for my audience to get to know you, I know you have some interests you've shared. I know one of them is being a part of a club where everyone seems to be fascinated with rocks. That's
Yes.
one of them. Explain that a little bit.
I am currently the treasurer of the Minnesota Mineral Club, and a lot of the people who belong to the club are into the mineral and geology of it. We have speakers who come in every month and talk about the topography, how the Earth created the different types of rocks through volcanic stuff or through sedimentary things. Sometimes we had somebody come in several months ago who talked about microscopic makeup of sand and different types of sand throughout the world that she'd studied, and she gave us detailed pictures on how to find, the different details on all that stuff. We have a newsletter that is an award-winning newsletter that we've won from all the other newsletters across the country. There are millions of rock hounds, as we're called, across the country, and there are Facebook groups dedicated to this hobby. A lot of the people who collect rocks take classes to polish them, carve them. That's the study of lapidary. I've taken a couple classes myself. I've done some cabochons, which can be used to make jewelry. I've also carved a flower, which I'm also making into a pin. But my passion is stonemasonry. I'm self-taught. I built the retaining wall, which you might have seen down at the
I'll also
front
take a
of my
closer
house.
look at it as I go out.
40 feet long and 4 feet high.
Okay.
And that was my first big project other than the front steps that you walked up when you came here.
Yeah, I noticed I didn't even really capture exactly how it was on there, but your house number is built into the steps. Is that carved out of there?
That actually, I took a ceramics class and made out of tile to put into the stone steps when I built them.
Okay, I thought that was great, though, because I thought it was at the right house, but I saw it on the steps. It had to be right.
And then after I did those, I thought, all right, I'm ready to do another project. I rented a Bobcat backhoe and built a staircase at the back of the house. I took out a window and put in a pair of double French doors. And then the building inspector said I needed to dig down 4.5 feet, pour a footing, build an underground retaining wall so that I could build this stone staircase on top of it. And I like to tell people that using that Bobcat backhoe to dig that hole is the most fun I've ever had with my clothes on.
Were you a kid that would play in the sandbox? A little girl playing with the boys?
Yes.
Were there other little girls that were doing that, or basically you?
It was me. I would line up the mud pies. My mom still calls me her mud pie girl whenever she comes over and sees me elbow deep in the dirt. So yeah, now it's mostly gardening, but I do, end up playing a lot in the mortar also.
That's really neat. My first exposure to rocks as a kid is I lived on a farm and we'd pick rocks. And we'd do the same fields every year. And I never quite understood at that age, like, why are there always rocks? There's kept on being more. And of course, Dad would have plowed the field probably in the meantime that, it pulls more rocks from just under the surface and brings them to a point where we needed to get them off the field so that when he went in and planted whatever he was planting, that the rocks wouldn't disrupt the planter. And at that age, and I guess still for many years, I didn't have the curiosity about that subject to really understand it. But clearly you took a different path of really trying to understand. And still today, where if you went to any beach in the world, perhaps, you would very well notice the subtle differences of the texture of the sand, I'd imagine, but also probably being able to name some of them based on what you just told me.
Right. Well, yeah, before I joined this club, maybe a couple years before I joined this club, I did not know the difference between quartz and feldspar. I thought they were the same thing, and now they're easily distinguishable for me, one from the other. But I would not have known that just even, half a dozen years ago. And
I have no idea. And I'm not sure that I necessarily care to know, but just recognizing that there is a difference, maybe at some point I'll be careful to recognize the subtle differences between these things. But there's the terrain and what we're left with in different parts of the world is so different. I have a friend who collects dirt from every city wherever he goes, like he travels, and has this collection, and it looks different. And yeah, I think it's a whole realm of things to learn and be curious about that I haven't ventured into yet. But clearly, it's something that is one of your biggest passions, and regardless, what are some of the other ones? Was it your biggest one?
Well, in addition to the stairway, I've done a driveway that is huge. I built a fireplace for my brother that's 2 stories high out at his farmhouse in Wisconsin, using rocks I found on his property.
That's cool.
I've done a lot of things for a lot of people, patios, stepping stone paths for my gardening clients. I've incorporated it into other projects. Gardening is a big passion of mine. I built the retaining wall so that I could backfill the wall and put a garden in, mostly because my hill is the tallest in the neighborhood, and all the neighbor kids kept sliding down the hill and pushing snow onto my freshly shoveled sidewalk. And I got tired of having to reshovel all the time.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that you do this. Do you still do it for hire a little bit or a lot?
A little bit.
Okay.
I am self-employed, and I seem to mostly make more time for gardening, especially when it comes to garden design, because I really enjoy doing that. The garden maintenance I will do for people who I've done the design for, but just to do garden maintenance, that's not really my passion. So I will usually refer other people when it comes to just regular chores.
Yeah. So you're more focused on the things that you're more passionate about, and what else should we know about you to learn more about you, Lee?
I love to learn how to do new things. I always have. And being creative. If I have a chance to do something creative, whether it's making costumes, which I've been doing since I was a little kid, and for my son, even when he was little, I asked him at the age of 3, "What do you want to be for Halloween?" He said, "A dead bug, Mom." I said, "A dead bug?" He said, "Yeah, a purple dead bug." And well, he knew purple was my favorite color. I suppose that was going to help turn the tide. If I didn't want to make a dead bug costume, being a purple dead bug would help. But yes, he was a dead bug, purple dead bug, and I was a can of Raid then. So
Oh, that's clever.
yes, we won first prize at that contest at the mall.
Have you won other first prizes for costumes?
Yes, absolutely.
So you're one of these people that wins these things.
Yeah.
I haven't met too many people like that. That's cool. And I do notice here as we sit here a lot of purple, including your water bottle and your shirt and things on the couch.
But not overdone.
No, because there's a lot of other colors here. I guess if the whole room was purple, that would be a little overwhelming.
There's only one room in the house that's like that.
Okay. Any other interests, passions that you want to share?
Cake decorating. Let's see.
So these seem all very visual, like things that catch your eye or making something really striking to other people's eyes. Is it more just for your own satisfaction, or do you like to do things that make other people?
I do it normally for other people. All the cakes are gifts. Most of the time, I have made the wedding cakes for family and friends, or birthday cakes for nieces and nephews. I have 26 nieces and nephews.
Ooh.
So being involved in their lives is really important, and making their wedding cakes and birthday cakes and doing what I can, however I can.
Do you end up making the wedding cake for like everyone in the family? Everyone knows that you do this, so every time something happens, they go to you?
As much as I can. There's, like any family, there's some people who aren't talking to each other right now, and because I'm related to that one of those people, I may not be invited.
But it's very typical,
yes.
Normal circumstances.
Right.
Not only do they invite you, they ask you to take this role and make the cake.
Well,
decorate the cake.
I'm normally offering before
okay.
they have even said that they're, engaged.
When you get engaged.
Yes.
Let me know. Okay. So you're influencing them to get engaged sooner.
Well, I see that you guys have been together for quite a while, and I just wanted to let you know that if and when you do decide that I want to be the one to throw the shower, and I would love to be able to make the cake if you're going to have some sort of a ceremony, whatever it would happen to be.
That's really cool. Yeah. Even, the number of speeches you've given, I don't know if I had the sense of how big your family or extended family was. But let's get into talking about this now. The last, it was a rant just this week at our Toastmasters holiday party, solstice party. You gave a rant. Everyone had an opportunity to give a rant, where as a part of raising money for the club, every minute that you spoke about whatever, you would donate $1 back to the club for the time that you were taking. And if I knew that you had a son or a children, maybe, I guess I hadn't quite remembered to this point. And there's so many people in the club, I don't really know the family situations of everybody. But I definitely learned a lot about what you've been going through, dealing with, challenges that you've had with your son through the years. So I guess kind of get into that, about what year you had him and some of the things that developed and took on, besides the being the dead bug for Halloween. And as a 3-year-old, what are some of the good things and the challenges that you've had going on with you and your son's life?
Okay. Well, I guess I should start at the very beginning. His dad and I got married and had a reception on a boat. We were living in Chicago at the time. Our reception was on a boat in Lake Michigan over 4th of July weekend.
Wow.
And his family, his sisters especially, sat down and wrote a song about us to the tune of Gilligan's Island's theme song.
Okay.
Sit right back and you'll hear a tale of Tom and Lee that started at Fitzgerald's Bar in this vicinity. The first mate made great apple pie. The skipper played the bass, and one said to the other, I think I like your face. It goes on and on. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I was so sure I was having a girl that I never really picked out boys' names. And when I had a boy, we decided to name him Gilligan.
You'd mentioned his name. I didn't give it a ton of thought, but it's directly because of that song parody at your wedding. Is that the biggest reason?
Well, we kind of, the bump got nicknamed Gilligan, and I had always kind of thought that I would like the name Ginger if it was a girl, especially with the last name Gerlach, which is what my husband's last name was.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Ginger Gerlach would be a very pretty name. And then when it was a boy, I said, there's enough Toms in the world. We don't need another Tom.
Mm-hmm.
I want something a little more unique. And since he was a musician, I thought Gig would be kind of a neat nickname for Gilligan. So Gig Gerlach would be kind of cool.
Okay.
Nobody ever uses it, though. They just like saying his full name too much.
Okay. So you named your son Gilligan.
Yes.
Birth was okay?
The birth went pretty well. I had 1 7-minute contraction, and then we went to the hospital, and I had contractions for another 4 hours or so, and he was born at 10:55 in the morning, I think.
And then how long was everything seemingly normal before you learned that there's going to be some challenges involved?
He was probably about 16 months when I had him at in his little baby carrier at a checkup at my doctor's office, and he was throwing a tantrum that was what I considered normal for him. And I had seen one of my younger brothers do it, where they just scream and scream that they can't get enough air. They have to take a breath so that they can scream some more. And he would kind of almost pass out, and his lips would turn purple trying to get air to scream some more. And the doctor said, that's not normal. He needs to see a neurologist.
And that was 16 months. And from there, I guess...
So she called his pediatrician, and together they set up a neurological appointment for the same day. And he had some testing done, and they said, well, he has ADHD and probably some other things, but we're going to start him on Ritalin at the age of 16 months, which now they would never, ever do. And they're saying that's possible that even more damage was done because of the medications. But back then, everything that I read and everything I was told was early intervention is the key. Do whatever you can as early as you can to help the kids, because the struggle early on is so crucial for helping them develop. And living in Illinois, trying to get him special ed, which was non-existent, even though we were in Oak Park, Illinois, which had one of the best public school systems in the state, they had no special ed program for kids like him. And I was kind of at my wit's end about what to do next.
What did you do?
I continued doing what the doctors told me to do. I brought him to a psychiatrist, and we sat on a couch, and the doctor would say, "Gilligan, do you know why you're here?" And I would talk.
Did he have a sense of any way that he might have been different? Did he seem to be different as the years went on than someone that was not having the challenges? Did he fit in?
The daycare that he went to, she coddled him. She let him kind of run the show. She would let him have his own space out on the porch, and if other kids played with him, she would let him tell them what to do. And if they didn't want to do it, then she would just corral them off into another area, because she understood that if he didn't get things the way he wanted them, that he would get violent.
Okay. So, I mean, we can get as in-depth or not with this, but as the years go on, what was it like raising him, and what started to happen? His
dad left right around his first birthday. So it was just him and I. Right, pretty quick early on.
Even before you knew of some of these issues.
Right. He had gotten another woman pregnant and was having another family.
That's, I guess, off the topic we were on, but I can't imagine that was an easy thing to deal with for you.
No, I had that emotional thing I was dealing with too. And by the time he was 3.5, I decided that, and he had a little sister, I decided I just could not deal with all of that emotional garbage anymore, and that's when I decided to move back to Minnesota.
So for a couple years, your son's half-sister, they were spending some time together?
Yeah, but a lot of times it was Dad saying, "I'm going to pick him up at noon," and he would be sitting in his snowsuit looking out the window watching for Dad, who never showed up. So, and I had no family support down there. I had great friends. I had a great job. And I loved them both. But it was just no school programs for him. And it was a really, really long day for me. The apartment building I lived in, I'd been there for 10 years. The landlord let me clean the hallways for extra money to get money off my rent. I mean, I had a million different ways that I was making things work. Mm-hmm. But it was just, I knew it would be easier up here.
So he was how old when you moved back here?
3.5.
Okay. And how did things start to change, if they changed for you, having that distance from that situation, and maybe for his schooling or education? Did things start to get better?
Yes. Right away. Well, my mom helped me buy this house. I came home for a high school reunion, and she said, "I found a house over by Phelan Lake I think you might like." And I said, "Mom, I don't know that I want to move home," but she's a realtor.
Okay.
And she told me that she would let me use her commission as down payment. And so I ended up buying this house without a job. She co-signed for the loan.
Okay.
And
I was wondering how they even let that happen. Today, I don't know if they would, but I guess with the co-signer.
Yeah. So I moved up here, and was still looking for work, but I got a job within a couple months at a video editing house, similar to what I'd been doing down there. I was a post-production coordinator, and was doing okay, except that they wanted me to work longer hours than the daycare felt I should be working. And my mom was picking him up some days and saying, he's acting up and it's all your fault for not giving him more free time, more one-on-one time with him. My mom blamed me a lot for his behaviors. She felt that the way I was raising him was contributing.
Did you at that time understand, or did she, like, there was other conditions, if I remember from your talk a few days ago, that he ended up being diagnosed with?
Intermittent Explosive Disorder and Oppositional Defiant Disorder were a couple of the things that were found or added as components. And then once we got here to Minnesota and the Ramsey County Children's Mental Health people got involved, they had a somebody come out and do a study and some testing with him, and they said that autism spectrum or Asperger's syndrome was very likely as well. And then with the special ed programs that they put him in with some different learning disabilities. But there was a Dr. Newman who was really great with him and who was meeting with us almost monthly, trying to find medications that would work for him and different therapies, and the county people who were always sending in-home therapy programs and therapists, and signing us up for different PCAs, personal care attendants, to help give me respite and give him some help with some of his fine gross motor skill help, and even simple things like reminding him to wash his hands after he uses the bathroom, helping him put his clothes away after laundry, simple chores, and learning to take care of himself, helping give me a break from having to always do it all the time.
So he couldn't be left alone.
Right. No. He would get into 6 more things while I was cleaning up the one mess that he'd made if I turned my back for a minute. Like one example is he mixed some popcorn with some lemonade and poured it all over the kitchen floor, and while I was cleaning that up, he, stuck a couple towels down the toilet, and this was yeah.
And you're able to laugh a little bit at it in this moment, but I can't imagine that.
Right, and stuck a dead squirrel in the neighbor kid's mailbox that he didn't like. There was always...
How does that go over?
Oh, not great. I had to make him go get it out before the kids found it. It was some neighbor kid told me about it, and luckily there's some good kids around who would let me know when he'd done something that was, too far beyond what was acceptable.
Were there any years during the childhood where you thought things were at its best that it ever was with him, raising him, easiest? before you had other challenges that we'll get to shortly?
Well, the first year he was the easiest baby in the world.
Okay.
He started sleeping through the night when he was only 10 days old. And he was a big baby. He was just an ounce or two shy of 10 pounds. So he had a very developed stomach, and I was breastfeeding, so he was able to drink a lot of milk and get a good night's sleep very early on. And I think that everybody I knew was jealous of the fact that my baby slept through the night so early. And he was a happy, happy baby, and just so easygoing. I was kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop because I just couldn't imagine that he could be like that all the time. I had brothers. I knew better.
Then ever again, did you think this is getting a lot better than it was and things are okay, or was it nonstop challenge until it's now he's been in jail or institutions or prison for a while. We'll get to that shortly.
Yeah.
Ever before that began, did you think things are getting better? Maybe this will be easier than I thought it would be.
We would have a couple days in a row where things would be okay, but normally, no, it was never a couple weeks where things were great. We would have a few hours at a time when things were really good, and he and I can get past difficulties and get over them. And now we speak on the phone several times a week, and we have a good relationship because we're not sharing space.
Oh, okay. So do you think that somehow was part of it because he always had to be with someone, and so often that was you that he would like act up because it was you more than others?
Yes, because he felt most comfortable being most comfortable sharing his feelings with me.
Okay.
But it was also pushing buttons with me. He knew what buttons to push to try to get me to react. And it was almost like, let me see if I can make Mom do this.
So he knew how to manipulate you in enough ways. As the years were going on, did you have a fear, or were you certain that at some point he's going to get himself into some problems, that he's going to have legal problems?
Yes.
Is that like, as a parent of a child with those challenges, do you feel like that's just, that day's coming?
Yeah. Well, I used to have kitchen utensils all over my walls. I think you may have. Did you go in the kitchen?
No, I didn't go in there. Or the purple room.
Okay. I have one wall that has a lot of vintage kitchen utensils. And there used to be a lot of knives up there too, but all those got put away because more than one house guest said that they had nightmares about knives getting used on them. And I was also fearful that that might happen someday. And steak knives got taken out of the drawer and used as a threat more than once when he was really angry. But anything could be used as a weapon when he was angry, whether it was a bike chain or a toe chain or a rollerblade that was on his foot. And he felt like using it to kick.
So you knew that this type of behavior didn't seem to be going away, so it was going to cause him some problems later. I guess as best you can explain what's happened in more recent years. I guess it's been a while now since he's been away.
Yeah, well, and he has not really done anything violent that I'm aware of, other than to protect himself, since he went into prison, um, at the age of 19. But um, I think that he's got other things that he's dealing with, other demons. He's always kind of had a lot of anger and just kind of negativity, just kind of always looking on the darker side of things. Born under a dark cloud, sometimes is how I've described it.
What was the day like? You said 19. Describe what you can. What happened the day that he got in some issues for the first time, where he was taken away?
Well, up until he was an adult, anytime the court got involved, they would always ask me, Mom, what should we do? Sometimes he would get taken to the juvenile detention center. Sometimes the police would take him to the psychiatric ward. It kind of depended on his behavior in the moment and how he was reacting to them upon arrival. And when the judge asked what should we do, a lot of times I would ask for the PO's input, or the people from the children's mental health, whoever their case manager was, ask for their input. Do you have any suggestions on a place that might be good for him right now? Residential treatment programs or day treatment programs where he might be able to go during the day, or after school programs that would give him some behavior modification, coaching, that he would still be able to come home at night or come home on weekends, that would have family therapies or group therapies, that I could still be really involved. But once he became an adult and he got into the system, that all changed. Nobody wanted to know what Mom had to say about it. He just got put into an orange jumpsuit and got put into the prison system along with everybody else.
So treat it like everybody else, and the people, whatever leads different people to be in that situation, probably a lot of things. But it sounds like to me, whatever mental challenges any of those individuals are going through, that's not a great concern, it seems like, once they're in that system. From your perspective,
Right.
they're just there, they're prisoners, the rest doesn't matter that much.
Right. His first lockup was just 10 months at the county workhouse. And he came out and said, that wasn't so bad. And they got him a room at a group home, and he went back to high school and got his diploma. And he started making friends on the city bus and met some guys who he'd get high with, or other guys who say, let's go rob Walmart, let's go steal stuff, and we'll just fill a backpack there and with electronic stuff and leave it somewhere, and if nobody takes it within a few hours, we'll know that it's fine for us to just put on and walk out. And the other guy never got caught, but Gil always did. Whether it was electronics or a candy bar. But that was obviously a parole violation.
Should you? I mean, obviously he did these things, so it's illegal to walk out of whatever store with whatever. These weren't his ideas. He was a follower a lot of times, and found himself in trouble that if he didn't have other maybe bad influences around him, you don't think he would have done these things?
I don't think it would have occurred to him.
He wouldn't have had these. He was doing enough where he maybe could have gotten in trouble, but the things that he would get caught with were other people's ideas.
Right.
He's suggesting?
Yes. I have a feeling that they probably considered him kind of a decoy so they could get away.
Mm.
Because he never saw this so-called friend again.
Yeah. And I guess you can try to explain his friends, what friends were to him, and everyone, I think, maybe has a different definition of friend. I think if you're not real close, you haven't developed a lot of great close relationships, the level of friend, there's a lower bar for that. So I think someone can be very susceptible if they don't have either the ability to or haven't developed great close bonds with people. That is when you're at risk of coming under someone who might deceive you into thinking they're a friend, but they're not, and they're going to take advantage of you.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's a very common thing in a lot of circles of life.
He had somebody who he considered a really close friend, who lived across the street and down a few doors, who we sat on the front steps and watched every other kid in the neighborhood go over to his house for a birthday party, but we hadn't gotten an invitation.
Mm.
And it was really heartbreaking for me to have to tell him, I'm sorry you weren't invited. And I don't know why you weren't invited, but I have a feeling it's because she didn't want to deal with your acting out or worrying about whether or not you were going to act out.
Did he was aware that he acted out well beyond what the other kids did? Like, you could tell him people aren't going to invite you to a party because of these things that you've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And would he get that?
Yeah.
You'd recognize they probably don't want me here, and that he was like, he understood that and was kind of okay with it, or was it heartbreaking?
It was heartbreaking. Yeah.
Even if he understood it, it was heartbreaking, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. The friend would still call my son his best friend. I think, at least to my son, he did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's things I haven't really considered. Let's get back, though, to the current situation. Is even today, before we spoke, you were down with a commission. Explain that, because your son been in and out. He comes out,
Okay,
and then goes back in, and explain how that's all played out and what you're trying to fight for right now.
Alrighty. Well, the IWOC, the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee, has been trying to get their motto and what they're working towards is eliminating the repeat of people going back for the technical violations, which is what my son has mostly had going on. I mean, other than that Walmart fiasco, nearly every other time that he's gotten sent back to prison has been for a technical violation. He's had a phone that he's put internet onto that he's not supposed to have. And because he has that as a condition of his parole, not having internet access without the PO's approval, that getting internet without the PO's knowledge is a technical violation that can send him back to prison for a year or more. And since he doesn't have medication to control his impulsive behaviors, and it takes 8 weeks to get in to see a doctor to get medication to control those behaviors, he can't. It's kind of a catch-22 of not being able to stop himself from not turning the internet on.
So he's getting into more trouble. He's doing things he's not supposed to do that maybe wouldn't happen, but because of the way the dates fall and needing to go through the process, he can't get his medication. He can't see his doctor. Is that it's trying to just make it easier for people to succeed within the restrictions that they know that they need to succeed.
Right.
So he's not succeeding as well because of some of the things that have happened that have kept him away from being medicated.
Yes. In prison, with the severe structure that they have, he does okay without medication. But once he gets out and he has the slightest change in that structure or lack of structure, it kind of does a number on him, and the freedom is almost more than he can handle.
So he needs to be medicated when he's out.
Yes.
And why? Explain to me again. I remember you explained it on a few days ago. Why exactly that doesn't happen? Why can't he get his medication?
Because in order to get medicated, you need to see a psychiatrist, and there is always at least an 8-week wait to get in to see a psychiatrist. And a lot of times that's just to see the doctor. Sometimes once you see the doctor, they say, oh, well, we need to do a complete psychiatric evaluation, and that's going to take 12 weeks before we can decide what medications you need. So that's 20 weeks.
And in that 20 weeks, he's done something and he's back.
Yeah.
What's the longest he's been out when he's been out?
7 weeks.
Okay.
He always does something to get sent back for another year. So this has been, he's still in for the original felony that he committed when he was 19. And he's 30 years old now. That original felony had a 15-year parole attached to it. So that means at the end of 2023 is when his parole expires and he has no more conditions placed upon him. Now today, the IWOC was meeting with the Senate and the Commissioner of Corrections, who proposed to put a cap on most probations of 5 years. Not all. Obviously not for attempted murder or, like driving while intoxicated type situations and some others. But I think for most felonies, they're saying a 5-year parole should be enough to get most people's lives under control and see that they're doing what they need to be doing, and anything more than that is just beyond what's necessary.
So that the people in prison will only be there for the length of time of the original conviction, more likely than something much smaller happening later that wouldn't be a crime that would send them to prison, but they end up going back, sounds like your son has.
Right. Well, I think in addition to their original sentence, on top of whatever that sentence is, that they would have a total of 5 years parole on the outside, that they would have to answer to a PO, a parole officer, to have the restrictions as far as a curfew or needing to prove that they're not on drugs by having to do regular urinalysis or prove that they have a steady job and, any number of conditions that they might be given by their PO to prove that they're becoming upstanding citizens who are doing their best to.
As you're getting more involved, what are your observations? Having had your son in the system for a number of years and now being more involved, I think, than you maybe ever have been as trying to get some things to change, what do you think people like me, like a lot of people that really haven't been involved, don't know the system, what would be most shocked by that's going on that really doesn't seem to serve a great purpose to help anybody?
Well, first of all, I think people would probably be really surprised to know the number of people in the corrections that are mentally ill. There's a lot of people who have nowhere else to go, and there is no. They used to have snake pits, is what they called them, or state hospitals, state mental hospitals for people who had mental illness. And they would lock people up there.
And give them better treatment? Or no?
Not necessarily.
But there would be a separate group of people.
Sometimes anybody who needed to be hidden away from society was put there. Whether they had MS or mental retardation or anything that society didn't want to deal with was kind of put in the sanitarium.
Okay.
Is what they called it. But once they started doing away with those and the Disabilities Act came about, they started getting more group home situations for people. And I actually worked at a group home for a while. There's a lot of them for women. There's a lot for men with physical disabilities and some mental disabilities. But the mental illness component, there is a lot less help for. I would say that a lot of the veterans who are homeless, a lot of the men and women who are homeless or in the prison system are people who are mentally ill, who are without medication, without treatment, and who are not getting the treatment that they need because they're stuck in the correction system.
Mm-hmm. And it's a cycle where it's hard to get out. And for your son, he hasn't been able to get out of it. When will he be out of it and kind of get a fresh start? Is that coming?
The end of 2023.
And by what type of changes do you hope to happen, I guess, in the meantime? But then, I guess, answer that first, and then I'm curious what you see for him when he is out.
Well, if they do end up doing away with technical violation reoccurrence, and he does happen to get out sooner than the 2023, I am hoping that he can stay out and that he can find a way to move forward in life, but he doesn't have a whole lot going for him in that direction. He doesn't have a job or any kind of training. He's spent, almost a dozen years now locked up where he could be learning something. And he has been studying on his own, but it's all stuff that he's interested in, the occult and
What is he studying?
the occult.
So you don't think what he's studying could lead to any employment?
No, it's mostly for his mental and spiritual entertainment and health. I think it's for him to be able to grasp a reality that he can accept.
Okay. Has he ever had a job on the outside?
For a short time, he worked at Little Caesar's pizza place.
And that didn't go well?
Or
he didn't want to be there?
It was part-time, and he did okay. But, starting from the age of 7, he was considered disabled by the Social Security Administration because of the number of disabilities that he had. And when he was 17 or 18, one of his psychiatrists that he was seeing at the time said that they felt that PTSD should be added as one of his diagnoses because of some trauma that he suffered after getting beat up by some kids in a situation that he found himself in.
So what do we do, Lee? Whether it's for him or for anyone else that has a similar path that is in this system, how, as a parent of a child who brought you challenges, I think, since year one, pretty much, all the way to now, what can we do? What can anyone do? What could you do better? I don't know. I'm sure you think about it a lot. What thoughts really make you think this would make this situation better? I'm not even sure what question to ask you. I just talking and having you dealing with it, him dealing with it, the people and all the different situations dealing with it, just people dealing with it kind of sucks. What can we do?
I try to give more people the benefit of the doubt more often, and just try to have more of an open heart more often, wherever I go and whatever I do.
Because you don't know what people have been through.
Right.
And you don't want to make a quick judgment on anything.
Yeah.
Because you've been through things that people would judge you on, I suppose, a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. I met somebody just within the last couple of weeks who has had some really horrible traumas. He was sold by one of his uncles to, while he was in grade school, to some high-powered lawyers and judges every summer. He was shipped by his mom out to visit his uncle, and he was shopped around.
I can't even imagine. But these stories we hear probably happen way more than we realize.
Right.
So the main point is be more understanding, accepting, and loving.
Yeah. That's the only thing I can think of to do is just try harder to spread the love around.
And then for someone maybe working in the legal system to have the outcome of what their job is to help make this person's life better by loving and caring for the person that's caught up in the system, as opposed to forgetting about them, making their life worse, or just neglecting the fact that whoever it is, no matter what they've done, has needs, and their life could improve if you made it your outcome to improve their life, as opposed to just pushing them aside and leaving them sit in the system that is serving no one any purpose, except maybe somewhere someone's making money off it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I voted for Governor Walz because he did make a point of wanting to change the prison system that we have here in Minnesota and wanting to reform it to some degree. And he put in a new commissioner pretty quickly. And this commissioner has been meeting with our group every 6 or 8 weeks and listening to us and our stories and attempting to make small changes. He doesn't want to step on the toes of the legislatures by making changes too quickly, and we're anxious for him to do that anyway. But the fact that he proposed this 5-year cap is definitely a step in the right direction, and we were all there to support that today. And I think that he saw us and was pleased to know that we were there. I hope so. And we have another meeting with him in February where hopefully we can move another step forward as far as the technical violations and getting some of that dropped, as well as maybe releasing some of the people who are still in on technical violations. Oklahoma did it. Oklahoma let out hundreds of people a month or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Governor Walz wrote an article in Time magazine within the last few weeks. We want him to be able to do the same thing for our family and loved ones.
I suppose we'll need to see how well that all turns out. The people that were let out, make sure that it actually ends up being a good thing. I'd hope so. The people they let out must have met a certain standard where they thought these people will be okay and be able to succeed better on the outside. But I imagine these processes, again, they just take forever before more places are able to adopt change. And change is so hard, I think, for so many people. And this podcast is a lot about change and willingness to look at things differently and understand someone else's perspective and recognize that our own maybe are not always correct and that we can change.
Right.
Let's we'll put that topic aside for now. And something else you gave a speech about recently, my friends on Facebook, I think maybe I'm not exactly sure where I first heard of this, but it's a unique situation and a sad situation. You were dating, found someone you liked, and were surprised, I guess, when you hadn't heard from him in a few days. So I guess talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I'd only known him a few months, 11 weeks to be exact. Once I sat down and counted out the days, we'd been messaging regularly. I counted how long it took me to read all of our messages. It takes about 4 hours to read all of our messages, and I read them over many times after he died. But that's what happened. I noticed that he had not read a couple of my messages in a couple days, and he always responded right away. And when he didn't reply or read them, I thought, that's really strange. I'm going to do a general search. I don't know what made me decide to do a general search on Facebook under his name, but I did. And I noticed that the day before, one of his friends had posted that the day before that, he died of a heart attack at work. So our relationship had not gotten to the point where we had talked about it with family or anything, so no one knew to contact me. And we had met through a Facebook dating group that had, like 800 people or something. It wasn't a big group. But it was really the first person that I had felt close to and had a connection with in many years. So it hurt a lot to have to deal with. And I went to the funeral down in Mankato. And got to hear some nice stories about him when he was younger, and introduced myself to the family. And the parents didn't know what to say. They kind of turned away. His brother was very kind to me, gave me a hug, and that was that meant more than anything to me, to know that somebody who loved him knew I did too.
What was that like? First off, no one knew to contact you, and then you found out, and you're like, maybe based on the recent weeks, like the person he was becoming closest to in this world, and then he's gone, and obviously that's a huge, immediate, and for as long as it needs to be, an absence in your life, to then take all of that, whatever you were feeling, and go introduce yourself to these people that didn't know you existed and were also going through their own thing.
Right. Well, and he was only 43. So the fact that he had a heart attack at 43 was enough of a shock to them. And he had never had a serious relationship, any kind of a long-term relationship or a marriage or anything. So some woman, especially an older woman, coming up to them and saying, I was dating your son. It was, I'm sure, more than anybody wanted to deal with. So I just introduced myself and said, Christian told me his favorite flowers were plain white daisies, and I picked the last of what was in my garden for him. He would never take them when he came to my house. He told me they looked too nice on my table, but now he can't say no, so here they are. And where can I put them? And then I went with the woman who had started the Facebook dating group. She drove me. She spent the whole afternoon with me. She was very, very kind. She even came over that morning and did my hair for me, to just be a very kind and nurturing person. She'd only met me once before.
So she's a very giving, loving person, and I know she's done that kind of thing for a lot of people in the group. So,
because going there, there's so much emotion going on, but going there alone, not knowing anyone, probably would have been
right.
that much harder. So having her with you, I'm sure, was pretty important.
Yeah.
And you were there, the service, and whatever happened after, and has that been it? Any further contact?
Well,
is anyone more curious to get to know you based on what you've received?
There was one other situation. The friend who posted the notice that he died was a gal who he had told me the week before he died that he had written a long, nasty letter to her that they had once been business partners, and that she had stabbed him in the back one too many times, and that he was done with her, and he said, I wrote her this letter that is, people are going to say doesn't sound anything like me, but I just had to do it. Now that I know what a real friend is, or me, I'm guessing, I just had to tell her what I really thought of her and how I just didn't want her in my life anymore. And this was like the first thing he said to me when he walked into my house that day. And he went on about it for about 10 minutes. And I said, Christian, that just does not sound like you. I'm sure you're going to change your mind about this. And he said, well, I can't see it happening anytime soon. And, if maybe someday I'll get over it. But right now I'm just too upset to even think about it. And so I contacted the woman, not realizing that it might be the same person at first, and said, I'm a friend of Christian's, and I am just hearing that he died, and I'm pretty upset. And she said, well, I can't understand you because you're crying so much. Maybe we should talk tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then the next day I put two and two together that he had said her name was Amy and that this woman's name was Amy. And so I messaged her and I said, are you the woman that he wrote the nasty letter to? And she said, yeah, we talked, and we worked everything out. But the night before, she'd said she hadn't talked to him in several months, and that's why she had no idea who I was. And now she's saying that she had talked to him, and I thought she's lying about something. Well, she ended up getting his computer and blocking me from his Facebook page. So,
since he passed away, since the funeral, since everything.
Yeah. So the family was leaning on her quite heavily during the funeral.
So if anyone wanted to reach out to you, they might not know who you are anymore again?
Possibly.
Because of that? Wow.
Yeah, I reached out to a couple of his friends, and they friended me, but then all of a sudden they didn't want to talk to me. So I think that she also reached out to them and said, don't talk to this girl. Because I just was wanting to, I said I would love to hear whatever stories you have of him, because I'm still missing him and I'm wanting to know more.
How long has it been since he passed away?
October 9th was when he died. October 11th is when I heard about it.
And we're recording this now mid-December, so a couple months. So how was that for you, and how are you now?
I am doing good. I actually met with a friend of mine who is an intuitive, and she
helped me see that my relationship with him or his with me was meant to be finite. And it was able, it helped me look at things differently. For a long time, I was only looking at it as feeling sorry for myself and feeling sorry for the what ifs. Because he and I talked about moving in together already at some point, and had talked about him quitting his second job and coming to work, do gardening with me next spring, because his second job was working at a bakery and being on his feet all day. And he had told me that he'd loved gardening as a child, helping his mom in the garden and helping his little old man neighbor across the alley when he was little, and that he would love to come do that with me and help me expand my business. And that so I had dreams of doing something like that with him, and I had to let go of those ideas.
So this person, what do they title themselves as? How do you?
Oh, the friend from high school that helped me look at things differently. She's an intuitive and a healer.
So she reframed it in your mind to make you see it a better way, so you feel better about it now.
She called me his earth angel, that he needed to feel some unconditional love that he hadn't gotten before. And he got that from me.
Did you get the sense that he was, in those, since he started to get to know you, that he was happier? Or did he tell you he's happier than he had been in a while? Or ever? One of those, like, he felt good about life in a way that he hadn't?
Well, no.
Not necessarily?
Actually, about a month before he died, he lost a friend that he had been close with in college, and also a family member, both at the same time. And he was messaging me saying, I'm feeling really worthless and I don't know what to do about it. And then he messaged me saying that he got a second job and he was working 2 full-time jobs. And I said, well, that's not leaving yourself much time for developing a relationship. And he said, well, right now my focus is trying to get rid of my debt. Then I can be free to have a relationship. I feel like I want to come to you without a burden, or something similar to that. And I could understand that, but what I tried to explain to him is, when my brother Chris died, my thinking was completely different. I thought, life is so short. I don't know how much time I've got left on this planet. I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing nothing but bookkeeping. That doesn't make me happy. I want to do things that make me happy. So that's when I started making ads on Craigslist about all the things that I like doing more than bookkeeping, like interior design and gardening and cake decorating and party planning, and it just kind of like throwing noodles against the wall to see what stuck, and seeing who would hire me to do what.
Someone that would pay you to do something that you really wanted to do, as opposed to the work that you'd been doing that you knew how to do and could do it well, but didn't want to do it anymore, at least not to the same amount of time. Yeah.
And to my surprise, people were willing to pay me the same amount to do those things as they were to pay me for bookkeeping. And I started getting more and more clients, word of mouth.
I had business cards made up for every contingency, just in case. But that was the change that I was going to talk about. So there you go.
Okay. Are you doing better now? Like I
Yes.
know right now it's an emotional thing to talk about.
Yeah,
but
I am. I was able to reframe my thinking with Christian, and it's not. I've not thought about it anymore as thinking about what could have been. Just appreciating him for who he was and what he brought to my life in that time, and the fact that I am now more open to possibilities.
And now you said this is the first time in a number of years that you'd be going to get close to someone. It proves to yourself that you're capable of it, whether or not
Yes.
you thought you were before
Yeah.
having that experience. And maybe, I'm sure there is someone that you can get just as close with or closer with that you haven't found yet. They haven't found you, but that's there for you. And now you believe, I'm sure you believe that it can happen, and maybe in a way you didn't a few months ago.
Yeah.
So there's exciting possibilities ahead still.
Yes.
And that's much better than being sad for what you've lost,
Right.
because you can't change that anyhow.
Yeah.
You just mentioned the business cards and being prepared. So let's get to the personal growth segment. Is that what the ways that you've grown? Is that what you were
Yes.
alluding to?
Yes.
So get into that a little bit more. What you've learned and grown from that someone else might be able to use from that.
Well, I now make almost half my income from things other than just bookkeeping. I do consult on various design projects. I think maybe you've noticed that nearly everything in my house is not new, except for the TV. I used to have an antique shop, and a lot of the stuff that I have did not start out looking like this. A lot of it has been refurbished in one way or another to get it to look like this. I like to rescue old pieces of furniture and fix it up and either keep it or donate it or sell it, one thing or another. I'm a supporter of the bridging for people who are transitioning from homelessness or from the foster care system into their first homes. And they will accept any furniture or household items that people are willing to donate that are in good condition. And I collect a lot of people's cast-offs and fix them up and bring them over for that group.
As a way of helping people that couldn't afford much or anything to have what they need to have a home, to make it feel like a home.
Right, yes.
So instead of maybe donating money to a cause like that, and I don't know what you do if you have any donations, that's not necessarily important in this moment, but you're donating your time to do something to make someone feel like they have something of their own. And it's nice stuff that someone else didn't want that is now looking better than it was because you've developed these skills.
Right, yeah.
And you're taking the time to do it.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool.
Thanks.
So you, at a certain point, realize that the things that you love to do, you can find ways to do this more often, either to help someone else or to make an income and just use your time more wisely in ways that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's a lesson I'm sure we all can get, but you probably still can get better at it. I can get better at it.
Yes.
And sometimes we forget that we're trading time for money. And I think as much as anyone, I need to learn this lesson. There's the things that I enjoy. I can probably find better ways to use my time to enjoy them and either help someone with it. And like that, the podcast is kind of that. I'm trying to find ways to have conversations with people that I see that they've been through something that's changed me, changing other people, and try to push that back out. But there's still more. There's more I can do. There's more you can do, more everyone can do. But you need to recognize that the way we use our time really leads pretty directly to how much we enjoy our life and how happy we can be if we're using our time in ways that we really feel good about. And if we don't, find a way.
Right. Well, yeah, when I do the gardening stuff, I'm carrying around bags of mulch and, whatever it is, I'm definitely sweating and using my muscles and getting exercise in a way that's not using machines indoors at the Y.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'm making fences and trellises out of driftwood for my clients, and I'm collecting that driftwood by climbing around on the edges of the Mississippi River and carrying them up and down and loading my car. And that's another way that's way more fun for me than being indoors at the Y. Same with rock hunting and carrying them around the yard or putting them in piles to make something, a retaining wall or a path, stepping stone path.
I get it. Going to the gym and going on the elliptical or the treadmill or whatever you might otherwise do because you feel like you should be more active. That's not fun. But going
Right.
out and doing things you enjoy that force you to move around, force you to break a sweat, that are good for your long-term well-being to be in better shape than you would be if you were not doing any of that. But you're also enjoying nature. You're enjoying yourself. So what do you do in the winter then to be active?
I haven't figured that part out yet.
Well, there's rocks buried under that snow. You just got to go dig it, I guess. I don't know.
Those Hallmark movies aren't going to watch themselves.
I guess they won't. So it's you. It's you. You're the one watching. Lee, let's go to the Being Wrong segment. An opportunity for you to talk about something where you changed your mind, something that you maybe could now tell the former version of yourself that you were wrong. What comes to mind when I talk about being wrong or changing your mind in a big way?
Well, I would say that the first thing that comes to mind is my friend Christian, because he was a Christian and I'm a pretty outspoken non-theist or atheist. And when he first messaged me about rocks, saying he had some in his yard that he thought I might want to take a look at, I went to his page and saw that he had a lot of shares that were very Christian-centered or religious. And I thought, oh, well, this is not going to be a very long conversation, but I will definitely humor him and see how far it goes. And I was just really surprised at his snarkiness and his sense of humor and the way he was able to push back at me and give as good as he got, because most guys cannot do that with me.
Mm-hmm.
They usually let me run roughshod over them, and they're not very much fun to play with. I end up being more like a cat that's killed the mouse too early. So I was really surprised, and I was very, very wrong about him, and it opened my eyes to the fact that making early judgments about people, especially when it comes to something like their beliefs or their personality based on their looks, is really very shallow of me. And I never thought that I was a very shallow person, but I guess there are parts of me that still are.
Yeah, we don't tend to see the aspects of ourselves that we wouldn't like, perhaps, and that was an example for you. And so you had opposite beliefs or different beliefs. Very easily, he could have judged you for your lack of belief, and he obviously gave you a chance too, and you focus more on the connection you had and the chemistry when talking as opposed to those things. And
Well, yeah, I kept telling him, you need to go to my page and see what I'm saying about myself before I get too attracted to you. And he kept saying, oh, I don't need to. And it's like, do it. Then finally I just blurted out, well, I'm an atheist. And he's like, I don't care. Oh, wow. Really? He didn't care.
I think we all can forget that too sometimes, because someone or people in our past that might share a quality with someone new that we come across, we just kind of assume sometimes that they're going to have the same reaction to whatever it is about us.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a good reminder for you that just because maybe other people that you met that didn't like or didn't agree with the fact that you were an atheist held it against you, this person that you were interested in didn't care.
Right.
That didn't matter. And yeah, I think we're the human brain, the human mind, I think we tend to, even as much as we don't want to, put people into groups and treat someone new like other people. And it sounds like in this case, had you done that, you wouldn't have had the great 11 weeks that you had, and also built maybe additional confidence for a better chance at more good relationships in the future than you were able to through this.
Definitely.
And I've got to believe now that if someone were to reach out to you and say, I've got some rocks in my backyard, you're the right person to say that to, because you might say, okay, it's a good pickup line.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Lee, a pickup line, I've got some rocks. You want to come see them?
Yeah. It's probably wait until the thought.
Thank you for sharing everything you have with me. And when I started this conversation with you, I'd forgotten, as I mentioned, that you do odds and ends for hire. Is that something you want to promote through this? If someone comes across and wants some work done, that they can at least reach out and pose the question to you? I
am kind of a picker and chooser about my projects, though, because I can.
Yeah, and that's how it should be. Yes. Ideally, the ones that you think you'll do well at and want to put your time into, you'll do. Mm-hmm. But that's a possibility, at least, that you'll be open to listening.
Yes, I have a couple of clients that tell me they love everything I do and that I should just surprise them. So I'm kind of spoiled that way as far as being able to, I've been given artistic freedom and to be told what to do at this point might be kind of hard. But if somebody wanted something and they just weren't quite sure what, I would be delighted to help them figure it out.
So we don't even need to read between the lines here. If you are given full artistic ability in some space, you're more likely to be on board than if you're going to be micromanaged with something.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, now we know.
Thanks for putting it so nicely.
Thank you for your time, Lee. I appreciate it. Now I feel like I need to wander around your house a little bit more to check out what all you've done here.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.